Hey there, my friend. Erin Chase here from $5 Dinners, and you're watching The Erin Chase Show, where we chat all things intentional living and seeking that ever elusive balance that we are trying to find in our busy and overwhelming lives. And I'm your host, Erin Chase. I was just saying this morning to a friend that June so far has been busier than like the school year. I don't know what happened. Anyways, so it's busy. It's a lot, even though it's summer and it's lax. It's been busy. However, it's a different kind of busy. And I want to unpack that a little bit today as it relates with our kiddos. Today's topic is chores. I have so many thoughts and ideas about chores. This month for June, the Erin Chase Show is focused on our kiddos. So we talked about our kiddos and learning how to cook last month, and then not last month, 2 weeks ago. I was out of town last week, and then next week we're going to talk about the kids and laundry. And so I'm super excited to share some ideas and some thoughts, and hopefully these just give you things to think about and also help you maybe do things differently or smarter or smoother or better or whatever. And I want to hear from you. I have some thoughts, but I want to ask you, what motivates your kids to do chores? I don't know. Chores maybe isn't the right word. It's things around the house, the things that that happen in our homes. I want to know what motivates your kids, and I want to encourage you to think about what that is and kind of how to frame that. And so we're going to dive in to the topic of chores, and there's a couple things I want to chat about here with you today. The first is, kind of what is a chore? What does that mean? I want to talk about the reason chores are important. I want to talk about ways to teach your kids how to do chores. I want to talk about, do we pay for chores or not? Big question. Do we pay for them or not? We're going to break all of that down here on today's episode. If you're watching the replay, hang out. If you're watching live, hang out with me now or come back. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment on YouTube. If you are watching this or you're listening to this on the podcast player, which both YouTube and podcast players, the recordings are available on Friday. So you can email me at $5dinners@gmail.com if you have any thoughts or questions about today's episode. So chores, let me share I think the heart of chores, at least for me, and why they're so challenging. So this morning I got to visit with two people today. I had lunch with a friend and got to visit with someone this morning, which is like, yay for seeing human beings again. Anyways, I know we can see each other like this, but to be in person with friends is delightful. So I was sharing something earlier this morning with a friend, and she was like, oh my gosh, I totally did this wrong. I just told him what to do, and then the barking happened. So we're going to talk about what that is and how to avoid that when it comes to your kids and chores. But here's the two reasons that I think that chores are really important. Jobs, chores, duties, things you got to do to live in my house. Okay? That's what I mean by chores, just tasks that happen around the house. Okay? So I think that the reason that chores are important is twofold. One is because I think that they create and maintain the order and structure that we need in our homes. So that's one. And two, it's that it's the opportunity for our little people, large people, some of my people are bigger than me now, to learn personal responsibility and respect and taking care of all of the things in our home. And so I think those are kind of the heart of chores for me in these kind of jobs is creating and maintaining that order and learning the personal responsibility. Now, we see those cute little pictures and memes and whatever, like the memories are in the mess. Well, there's plenty of mess going on at our house, right? There's plenty of memories are being made and created at my house. But my experience, both personally and watching and observing my boys and their behavior, is that when things are in order, and when things are maintained, you know, then things just run smoother. There's less of the where's my belt or where's my soccer cleat or all of those things. And so when we can teach our children how to maintain this order and how to care for their items, it just makes it a lot easier. And I think that this was something that we did in our family before our house flooded in December of 2019. So right before the pandemic started, we had to move out of our house and then move back in a couple months into the pandemic. Well, in that whole experience, what kind of emerged from all of that is sort of this like wannabe minimalist, stripped down version of like, these are the things that we need and this is where they're going to live. And so we've been able to create sort of this structure and order and systems, if you will. Systems is a thing in our home with our things, both for where things belong and taking care of things like, I don't know, cleaning the floor and mopping the floor and, you know, cleaning up all the different things that have to happen in and around the kitchen around meal times, which is like on triple time right now that we're in summer mode again. It was like that at the beginning of the pandemic when we were eating at home all the time. So the order and the taking responsibility, I think when we can help our children and teach our children those two pieces of this as they're begrudgingly sweeping or mopping the floor or whatever the task at hand is, I think when they understand the heart of it and why it's important that this is just part of living in our house, right? Is being able to help us maintain all of the things that have to happen in and around your home. So I think for me, that's the heart of it. It's being able to teach the boys, like, here's the skills that you need for this, but ultimately it's the responsibility and respect for caring for the items that are yours or ours in the case of our family. So I wanted to open it up with that, and then I want to unpack, like, here's a question for you. Answer this for me. Do you pay your kids to do any chores? And if so, which ones? I know there's a lot of different schools of thought here. I'm not here to say that there's one right way or one other way. I would like to share an idea with you that might be helpful in providing a little bit of direction in answering this. At our house, we don't pay for most chores unless it's a larger type of a project that maybe we could pay somebody else, or we would pay somebody else to do. Then that would be a chore that's kind of above and beyond. So at our house, we actually have both kinds of chores. We do not pay the kids to do the dishes, to sweep, to vacuum, all of those things that we're doing on a daily, weekly basis. The laundry, no, that's part of living in our house. If there was a larger project, that's generally in the yard, I would say. We've done our yard work. For the most part, we've had to help a couple of times for some different things, for some specialty type things. But for kind of basic yard work that's going to take a little bit longer, then we will pay them, what we maybe would have paid. There also have been some, this is not necessarily a chore, but there's been some times where they have worked with me and in our business here, and helping with just different odds and ends type jobs for mostly for me and a little bit for my husband as well. He works for himself too. So I think it helps to make a distinction of what that. Now again, that's not a right or wrong. If you want to pay your kids, their allowance is kind of tied to their chores, or we're not doing any allowance at all, but you're earning money by X chores or a checklist or a chart or however you want to do that. There's no right or wrong way. But I should say, my husband and I have made it very clear to our kids that, all of these things you're going to have to do when you're on your own. So you might as well just do them here. It's just a part of the thing. There's less begrudging that happens, or angst, I should say, that happens when this is just part of the deal. Like if unless you want to pay rent, which none of them can do, right? I love that. So Mallory, it sounds like you and I are on the right track. So Mallory says that pay only for the extra ones, the normal ones have to be done first. That's a thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Basically, here's your main chores, and then anything above and beyond that. I think the key is being really clear, having your expectations, knowing you know what you expect of your kids know what they're expected to do. I think that's really one of the most important things is the expectation here. Like, no one's going to get upset if they weren't expecting to get paid for doing the dishes. But if somehow they get the idea that they're expected to be paid for any one chore, we're gonna have a lot of friction and tension, right? And so I think that being able to clarify both for ourselves and then with our families that this is just cost of living here chore, and this is an extra, I think is really key. And when we do have an extra project, we're really clear with the boys. Okay, this is how much we think that this is going to be. That you'll earn by doing this particular task. And I think that's just pretty much real world. We've tried to align it with, when they're adults, what's it going to be like? Well, when you're 24 living on your own, you're going to have to do the dishes. And so I just think having those habits and instilling those, I think is super important. Now, for motivation, I think that, okay, I want to reframe something. This is also based on a conversation that I had with a friend probably about 2 weeks ago now. We were talking about the whole oh my gosh, it's summer now. The kids are just going to want to play games or watch YouTube, which is just a habit I think that we all fell into, and especially given the last year, and just all of a sudden, literally, we couldn't go anywhere. Physically couldn't go anywhere. There was no school, all these things, right? And so I think I don't want anybody to feel kind of judged or beat up or anything by this, but I want to reframe it, because I have felt the burden of how do we undo that? It's not going to be undone overnight. How do we undo the fact that YouTube is streaming on 2 devices and Fortnite's streaming on another and somebody else is on an Xbox, right? How do we undo what we came into? Hit me up with some care buttons if you're with me on this, okay? So what are we doing to undo that? Of course, one needs to work on math facts. One, we need to do a little reading remediation. There's all these things that we could be doing, and we're working on getting those kind of implemented into our kind of day-to-day. And I do think that it is okay to use device time as the motivation. Now, sometimes I think, well, that's just kind of like bribing, but it's not. It's not. It's just not. It's prioritizing. Okay, I want you to focus on this word prioritizing, and what we are teaching our boys, apart from the time boundaries of device time, if you will. We all, whatever we want to call it, we'll just name it that. But there's the time boundaries, but there's also the priorities. We need to teach our kids priorities, and if the priority when they first open their eyes is turn on their switch and see which of their friends are awake. No, not a priority at our house, not how that's going to roll this summer. And so trying to figure out and each kid's priorities are going to be a little bit different. And it's not necessarily these things are chores, although some of them are at our house. But I want you to think about these are the things that you're responsible for, child number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you have. And these are your priorities. Your priorities are reading. Right now we still have swim team going on. Your priorities are making sure that your swim stuff is where it's supposed to be. Guess who's not in charge of your towel? I'm not in charge of your towel, son. I'm just not. You need to know where these things are. And like I said a minute ago, a lot of that came about when we moved back into our house after the crazy flood, and making sure the kids knew where everything goes and everything has its home. So that is an underlying piece that we've already got in place. But to be able to help the kids to see that these are the things that I need to be personally responsible for. If you've heard me say that on this here before this show, like personal responsibility is such a huge priority for our family, and that kind of filters into a lot of different areas. And of course, working is one of those. So here's the moral of all that is, if you are feeling bad about using device time as a motivator, don't use it, or reframe it as this is how we prioritize, my dear daughter, my dear son. This is what you need to be prioritizing. And once those things are accomplished, then you can work within the time boundaries that your schedule allows for that time. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. That's kind of been on my heart, and something that I've been thinking about, like, as we're unraveling all of this. It wasn't so bad when they were in school, but I knew as soon as summer hit, we were going to fall kind of right back into that early pandemic sort of, I don't want to say trap, but habit of just devices are easy. It's easy for me to allow them to do it because they're doing that while I'm working or doing something else, right? So that's, I want you to think about using those as a motivation. For other, cash might be a motivation. If cash is the motivation to get your kids to do all the chores, maybe it's penny chores. It doesn't have to be a lot of cash, but whatever the motivation is, I think probably for most kids at this current stage in history and life and culture, that probably their device time. This is an opportunity for us to teach them about priorities and about personal responsibility. Okay, next is how to teach chores. This is going to be very similar to how we teach kids how to cook, and that's by breaking it down. Now, in the chat I had with my friend early this morning, she was like, oh, I just taught them and didn't even really and then we were all frustrated and I was getting upset, and I call barking is where you're kind of like, you're not really yelling, but you're not really you're just kind of barking because frustrated, right? So I think it's really important to really slow down. We have time. We just don't feel like we have time. We have time. The first time we show a kid how to sweep and fill up a dustpan, we need to show them how to sweep and get all the dust off the floor. Do you want your kid sweeping it into, the dustpan as best they can, leaving that little line of dirt behind, or do you want them wiping up that line of dirt with a towel or a wet rag or a wipe or something like that? Like, that's what we've shown our boys. You sweep it in, and if there's any left behind, you wipe it up, because the dirt's just going to cycle. That's our personal preference. That's what I want them to do, so that's what we've taught them how to do. So the first time I'm going to physically show them and probably have them do a little bit of it. The second time I'm going to watch them do it. The third time I'm going to watch them do it again. And the fourth time I'm going to check and make sure that they did it. So again, you can see that takes time, but I think by slowing down and making sure they're doing it right, then you don't have to do it again. It's the same exact thing that I taught you 2 weeks ago with learning how to cook. You've got to show them each step of the recipe, regardless of how many steps, regardless of how simple it is. The second time you kind of watch and help a little bit. The third time you just kind of watch from afar. The fourth time you see if they can do it completely on their own. And then all of a sudden you'll never have to cook that meal again, unless you want to. So that's kind of the idea, is just slow down, just slow down, just slow down. Okay, I'm gonna read a couple quick comments. Mallory, thank you, has a chart. I love it. That's so great for understanding and just being really clear what your expectations are. There's so many different charts that are out there to help you with, which is paid, which is unpaid. I do have an article on the $5 Dinners blog. I'll put that on here. I didn't think to link that when I started. I think it is fantastic. The understanding the difference is this is live here work, and this is extra work. I think that's really fantastic. Sharice, it sounds like you're probably about on the same page. I like your definitions of family contributions and then extra over the top chores. However you want to name it, it doesn't matter. Make it fun and make it work for your people. So age appropriate chores, that's actually a really tough one. I see people, I see some different charts and stuff out there, and they're like, my 4-year-old, there's no way that they would be able to, sort laundry or, obviously a 4-year-old's too short to kind of reach up and start the washing machine, right? So I think it really depends on your child's, I think it depends on two things really. Your child's maturity level, and of course their physical developmental abilities. There's certain things that like literally don't have the fine motor skills to do. And then of course how much, kind of what phase of life you're in and how much bandwidth do you have to teach them and break it down. But I think, Mallory, if you break it down like I kind of shared, like hand over hand, physically showing them how to do the broom, how to line up the dustpan and how to sweep it in. I'm not doing a very good job with my arm motions here, but you get the idea. Is having, bringing a wipe with you so you can clean up any extra dirt, wiping off the dustpan when you're finished. Do you wipe that down when you're done? Like, however you want them to do that particular task, you've just got to show them. And I have been pleasantly surprised, and you can use my experience. I feel like my younger two boys were doing things at a younger age than my older two boys did, right? So maybe I might have started Ryan doing, oh goodness, unloading the dishwasher, loading the dishwasher. He was probably older. Well, those are both things that Austin, who's 8, can do. Does that make sense? So it's hard to know that. And I think that we get into the trap of, it's just faster if I do it. Well, I don't have to do those things at all anymore. So if I slow down enough to teach them, then they're able to complete those tasks. They're able to take ownership. They're able to have the independence and to be able to, take pride in being responsible for this particular task. So I think that that's a really challenging one to answer, and it could be something that you just kind of take every couple months. You're like, okay, we're going to introduce a new chore. I think you said your kids were 6 and 9, if I remember. Well, maybe you didn't say. Yeah, you did. So I would, maybe do them together. And then as you see which ones are working well for each kid, adding new ones for your older one and maybe different ones for your younger one, just kind of trying to wait and see in how they do with the different tasks that you do introduce. Amanda's using an app. I love that. Making sure that she's getting her weekly chores finished. I love that. I think that is super fantastic and sounds like it's working out really awesome for you. So thank you for sharing that. If you're still here, Amanda, you want to drop the comment or the app that you're using, that might be helpful for people. There's, you can go on Pinterest, there's checklists, there's apps, there's things that you can do to make it easy for you. I think with an app, you can probably input the information. If your kid has a phone, then they can, or an iPod or device or something, then they can check it off on theirs and it all syncs up together. So there's some different options out there for you. I think Nancy is asking about your 6-year-old in games. That's tough, especially I think it's even tougher when they're younger because they don't fully understand where all of these things fit into family life and prioritizing and all these different things that have to happen, laundry and dishes and cooking. Like there's a lot that goes on in running a home, if you will. And so I think the younger they are, the harder it is for them to see that. My 8-year-old sees it all because he's got all these bigger brothers, right? So I think that maybe it's taking one or two, just here's your 2 priorities, my little 6-year-old buddy, and let's do those 2 priorities and helping him to think about being responsible, work hard, play hard, right? I think that that's totally a fantastic kind of underlying philosophy for in this conversation in general, but that also applies to schoolwork and activities and all the different things that our kiddos are going to have to face as they grow. Okay, let's recap. Woo, I love it. Kids and chores. I love. Okay, so I want you to think, slow down, and teach them well. Okay, whatever the chore is, go one at a time. Slow down and teach them how you want it to be done because that makes all the expectations very clear. Also communicate paid or unpaid, how much it would be, or if it's not anything, this is just a part of living here chore. So just being really clear about the expectations and how you teach it, kind of breaking it down and making sure that they're getting it right, is going to be really essential in the long run. You're not going to have to check check what they're doing, all of that often. But you do definitely want to make sure that they're, completing the tasks that as you want to. And I want you to feel like you're empowering your kiddos, and I want your kiddos to feel that sense of ownership and that sense of responsibility and that independence. I think those are such crucial character developments and characteristics to develop, and they are really important, and chores is really a fantastic way to help to build that, both kind of mentality of it all, as well as just the action of it all. So when it comes to taking action, I want you to pick one chore and teach it either to all or part of your kids, depending on who needs to learn how to do. Just take one thing. Maybe we're going to learn how to vacuum. And that involves moving chairs, sliding smaller furniture out of the way, getting behind the furniture. Because if I just said to my boys, here, I want you to go in your room and vacuum, they're literally going to do like 6 swipes of the vacuum and think they're finished. Well, no, there's crumbs over here, and there's dust over there, and there's the paper from their notebooks from after final exams. Those little paper shreds were all over the bedrooms from studying for finals and schoolwork and a couple weeks ago. And so no, like let's properly vacuum the room. Okay. So pick a chore and let's teach everybody your expectations and how you want that to be finished. Mallory, I do not have an answer for your question. Mallory's asking, how do you determine the monetary amount for each chore? Is there a going rate? I think that's going to depend on, your personal preferences, your personal budget. Do you want to have penny chores, quarter chores? I've seen where it's like, take a chore and you've attached $1 to that chore. There's you can make these little sticks, and, the stick has the chore name on one end and the dollar amount or quarter amount or whatever on the other end. And so, some chores are worth more. For me, I think that the two things to consider would be how long it's going to take. If it's something that's going to take longer, then I think they should get paid more. I don't think if it's a project that's of really great value and it would be really helpful for me if you got it done, then, maybe attach an extra $1 or $2 to it. Depending on what it is. So again, I don't think there's a real answer, but there's some things to consider. I don't think there's a going rate for these days. If you Google or look on Pinterest for chore sticks, I think, or something like that, there's you'll probably get a sense, and you're like, okay, well, these would be the 5 things that would be most helpful if my kids were doing these, and here's the amount. And then you have some sort of a checklist or a tracking or your notes phone in your app or whatever, notes app on your phone. Then you would have a way to kind of keep track of what what is kind of owed for the chores that your kiddos are doing at your house. Okay, I am going to wrap it up here. I love these questions. I love these comments. I love that we're having this conversation, and I'm excited to talk more about the kids. And next week, 2 weeks ago it was kids and cooking. This week it's kids and chores, and next week it's going to be kids in laundry. We're going to dive into that specific topic a little bit further. So please, if you haven't yet subscribed to our live shows, I do a live show on Tuesdays, the Erin Chase Show. We have the Dinner Made Easy show on Thursdays. And then in June this month, we're doing Whisk Kid Live, where we're teaching kids how to cook live as well. Of course, if you cannot tune in live, we have the replays that live here on the Facebook page. We upload the replays to YouTube. You can watch them there. We also upload the audio version to all the podcast players that are out there. So wherever you want to watch or listen, we try to make it easy for you so you can get the ideas and the inspiration. Just get the juices flowing. That's what I'm here to do. I want to help you get the juices flowing so that you can, in this topic, in this case, get your kiddos, get on the same page in getting the chores that need to be done in and around your home. So that's all for this episode, my friend. It's bye for now, and we will talk again soon.